In the 1990s, there was an agent who handled Superpower. He used astonishing methods to save his country. But even then, so many pieces of his country were broken that 15 new countries were created from it. Who kept harming his country? What was America's role in this mission? And at the end of the video, you will get some truly amazing information. Vladimir Putin was a KGB officer in the early period of his life. The KGB was the largest intelligence agency of the Soviet Union. Its job was to keep an eye on the enemies of the state and conduct covert operations. Putin also carried out intelligence services in Germany and other regions. This experience made him tough-minded and gave him a strategic way of thinking. At that time, the Soviet Union was one of the world's two major superpowers. The Cold War was ongoing between America and the Soviet Union. Every region held political and military importance. This background later shaped Russian politics. There was no direct war between the Soviet Union and Pakistan, but the war in Afghanistan brought both face to face. During that period, Pakistan was an ally of America. America provided weapons and training to the Afghan Mujahideen. Pakistan's intelligence agency played a role in logistics and planning. The fighters on Afghan soil were Afghans themselves. The objective was to weaken the Soviet army. This war proved to be very costly for the Soviet Union. It shook its entire system. At that time, the Soviet Union had a vast territory, stretching from Europe to Asia. Afghanistan was close to the Soviet Union's southern boundary. The Soviet leadership feared that if Afghanistan slipped out of their control, its effects could spread to neighboring regions. Therefore, military intervention was carried out in Afghanistan. However, the mountainous terrain and local resistance caused severe damage to the Soviet army. The prolonged war destroyed the economy. Military morale declined. Eventually, the Soviet Union continued to weaken. After the Afghanistan war, internal problems within the Soviet Union increased. Economic crisis, political unrest, and identity-based movements intensified. Various republics began demanding independence. The central government's control weakened. In 1991, the Soviet Union officially came to an end. This meant that a major superpower had collapsed. The world's political map changed. America emerged as the sole superpower. As a result of the collapse of the Soviet Union, a total of 15 countries came into existence. Among them, the largest and successor state was Russia. The remaining 14 countries included Ukraine, Belarus, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. In addition, Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, and Uzbekistan also became independent. Turkmenistan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Moldova also emerged as new states. Each country formed its own government and laws. The Soviet name became only a part of history. Russia assumed the responsibilities of the Soviet Union. After the Soviet Union, Russia faced many difficult conditions. The economy was weak, and politics were unstable. During this period, Vladimir Putin re-emerged. First, he was appointed prime minister. In 1999, Boris Yeltsin resigned. After that, Putin became acting president. In the 2000 elections, he was officially elected president. He presented an agenda to strengthen Russia again. Military power and state control were increased. During Putin's era, Russia attempted to regain its lost power. Resources like oil and gas were brought under state control. The military was modernized. Russia adopted a tougher stance in its foreign policy. Differences with America and Europe increased. Putin conveyed the impression that Russia was no longer weak. Reducing the losses suffered after the Soviet Union was his objective. This mindset created new tensions in the world. Russia once again became important in global politics. Even today, there are some regions within Russia that want to separate. Chechnya is the most famous example, where two major wars have already taken place. Apart from this, internal tensions exist in some other regions as well. Putin's government suppresses these movements with force. Russia makes no compromise on its territorial integrity. The pain of the Soviet Union's collapse is still felt in Russian politics. That is why central control is kept very strong. Talk of separation is seen as a threat. It would not be wrong to say that the Afghanistan War played a major role in the decline of the Soviet Union. This war weakened the economy, the military, and the system as a whole. Pakistan, America, and the Afghan Mujahideen each played their respective roles. The result was that a great empire collapsed. The name Soviet Union disappeared from the world map. In its place, many new countries emerged. The global balance of power changed. This was an important turning point in history. Even today, when we look at Russia and Putin, we see the shadow of the Soviet Union. Putin's thinking and policies are connected to that era. He wants to restore Russia's honor and power. He considers the collapse of the Soviet Union a great tragedy. That is why Russia's attitude is tough and strategic. This story is not just about a single war, but about the collapse of an entire system. This topic is still very important for the world today, and this is also the central message of our video. Vladimir Putin began his professional life in the Soviet intelligence agency, the KGB. After obtaining a law degree from university, he joined the KGB, where his duties included gathering secret information, monitoring enemies of the state, and protecting state secrets. He was mostly assigned responsibilities related to counterintelligence and foreign intelligence. He also served as an agent in the German city of Dresden, where he handled covert operations for Soviet interests. During this time, he gained experience in spy networks, report writing, and crisis handling. While working in the KGB, his personality became more disciplined and reserved. This experience later became the foundation of his political journey. Pakistan's intelligence agency played a strategic role during the Afghanistan War without engaging in direct combat. The ISI, in collaboration with America, organized the Afghan Mujahideen and established systems for training, planning, and supply lines. In this entire process, Pakistan allowed its territory to be used as a base, while the fighters were mostly Afghan and the weapons came from America. The benefit of this smart strategy was that the Soviet army did not confront Pakistan directly, but instead became trapped in the difficult terrain of Afghanistan. The prolonged war, increasing losses, and economic pressure weakened the Soviet system. It would be more appropriate to say that Pakistan's intelligence, through strategic support and coordination, created an environment in which the Soviet Union began to collapse from within. Pakistan's intelligence agency played an extremely quiet yet deep role throughout this entire period. The Afghanistan War was not only being fought on battlefields, but also on psychological, political, and systemic levels. The ISI, in cooperation with America, developed a strategy in which the Soviet Union was weakened internally rather than confronted directly. Existing national unrest, independence movements, and dissatisfaction with the central government in various Soviet regions were understood and closely observed. The Afghanistan front was designed in such a way that the Soviet army remained entangled there and could not focus on the movements developing within its own territory. As the war dragged on, the economy declined and central control loosened. As a result, movements in regions such as the Baltics, the Caucasus, and Central Asia became stronger. In this way, without any direct war, a great superpower gradually shook at its foundations and eventually scattered across the pages of history. Today, nearly 35 years have passed since that war, yet its impact is still clearly visible in global politics. During this period, the relations between America, Pakistan, and Afghanistan have undergone deep and fundamental changes. Countries that once stood together are now engaged in major conflicts, tensions, and disagreements. The ties between these three nations have deteriorated to the point where trust and cooperation are almost non-existent. In contrast, Russia's closeness and cooperation with Pakistan and Afghanistan have steadily increased over time. This is a strange but profound lesson from history. Friends and enemies are not always the same. Time teaches us that in moments of conflict, rather than making impulsive decisions or resorting to war, one should choose patience, wisdom, and dialogue. Fighting only brings destruction, whereas understanding and careful strategy can truly protect nations from harm.